Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. My name's Steve Gaskell. I'm a high-performance business coach. I'm going to be sharing with you this afternoon peak performance and really how to avoid a crisis. Now, on the back end of everything we've learned over the last year, hopefully what I'm going to share with you this afternoon will put us in good stead going forward. And I think one of the things to recall and remember is the fact that, you know, if you think about it, there is a lot of potential as we go into 2021. So this afternoon, it's all about essentially financial mastery. So we got the record button up and running, so I can share the recording with you afterwards. I'm going to stop sharing my video for the moment so that we can dive in. Just firstly, if you don't mind, I can see we've got some the participants up there. Just give me a show of hands if you can hear me firstly, and you can see the title screen. That's always really useful to see first off. Brilliant. So we can see some of that coming. Okay, so camera off. You can still see the screen. Let's dive in. Let's dive in for the next 45 minutes to an hour of your time, and see if we can't get you some real focus going forward on finances and your numbers. So the first thing I want to really talk about is, I suppose, really, in my experience and having worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of business owners, and certainly supported many business owners over the last 12 months, one of the things that has been really quite apparent is, as business owners, there is a lot of access to the numbers and, you know, I guess an insight to the numbers that we need. The challenge is for too many business owners is that the owners, the management teams, don't take the time to study them and understand them. And that's probably one of the, if not the biggest challenge that we face out there. I often come across a lot of businesses that when we start to talk about, you know, their finances, their financial mastery, where they are, there is a deep knowledge of how much money is in the bank account, but then it kind of stops there. There isn't a great deal else in terms of that level of financial knowledge. I know what I've got coming in, I know what I've got going out, and I know what's in the bank. And this afternoon, I want to challenge you, firstly, in terms of the level of detailed knowledge and understanding you need to take and the type of focus that you need to have. And then we're going to give you some strategies and focus. And right at the end of today, we've got a bit of a bonus in terms of actually how we can physically get involved and help you with really nailing your financial numbers. But more than the financial numbers, as you'll go on to hear later on, it's really about actually having cash in the business. That's the key factor here. We've got a chat box as well, so as we go through, we're, you know, anybody got any particular questions, fire them in. If I'm unable to answer them during the session today, I promise to respond to those questions either in an email or with a call, but I will try and get to them as we go through this afternoon. So what type of person do we need to be? And I think actually what comes in this context is it's really, you know, eight key concepts that create the environment for business success. Two heads are better than one. Now, often in business, as a business owner, it can be quite a lonely place. And, you know, you as a business owner might not have anybody else to talk to. Now, certainly where I work with my clients and they've found themselves previously in that position, suddenly they've got two heads. They've got, obviously they can, you know, can talk to myself and they can actually, you know, engage in that conversation. But the other side of this one within your business is who else is it that you can actually engage with? So two heads are better than one is don't necessarily take all of this as a burden on your shoulders. You know, share that burden, share the insights, and maybe even, you know, your accountant. I often find accountants are massively underutilized. You know, they're utilized to do your PAYE, they're utilized to do your end of year accounts, they're utilized to do your VAT return. And that's just the top of the pyramid. If you look at everything else they do below and you talk to an accountant about how you make your numbers work for you, trust me, they will absolutely jump at the opportunity. Within your business, I think, remember, everybody has the right to be heard. You know, this is just about that good communication. Seek always that the truth is told. And that's whether that's internally to yourself and actually wider within the organization. Remember, the need of the customer comes first. That's what keeps us alive. You know, there is a real focus here with regards to making sure that we are looking after our customers. We know that we've got to do that through looking after our employees as well. And with that, promoting teamwork and leadership is absolutely critical. I think also, you know, for success, always think about that, you know, what you say is your bond. Our words are our bond. No surprises, you know, put the uncomfortable issues firstly on the table. You know, I've sat at a number of boardroom tables in the past where we skirt around the tough issues. I think the fact of the matter is that, you know, the tough issues, and if you think about the last 12 months, I dare say there have been many, many occasions where the tough issues are those that have got to be discussed first. And be a proactive and positive business citizen. You know, be a part of your business community. Now, the reason I talk about the 8 keys to business success and why I'm going to go and put a little bit of emphasis on what it is to be a great leader is because these form the baseline in terms of how you approach your business. And when we go on to talk about the numbers in business today, we can talk about a raft of different areas, but unless we've got the right mindset and unless we have the right attitude going in, marginally, you know, it's kind of irrelevant. So, you know, having a focus on ourselves first. And as you can see here, I've just given you a few ideas on what it is that makes a great leader. You know, listening is absolutely critical here. Interesting little thought for you here. You know, listen and silent use the same letters. You know, when we listen to people, it is about actually being silent, showing empathy and understanding our team. I'm going to guess that right now in the current situation, showing empathy is absolutely critical in all that we do. Attitude, you know, having a positive attitude. The negative bias that we have probably experienced over the past year, and even, you know, even if we look at now, you know, even with all the good news and that ever growing and brighter light at the end of the tunnel, you know, everyone seems to be defaulting to the negative because we are absolutely bombarded with negativity. You've only got to watch the news to see that. So it's important for us in our own mindset and our focus in our business, and a responsibility for us in our business is to have that positive focus in terms of how we're going to get through this, how we've got through it, and how we go beyond. Decisions and making the tough decisions, that is absolutely something that sits comfortably with, well, not necessarily comfortably, that sits with the business leader. And then energizing the team and showing resilience. Just a few ideas and elements for you to reflect on in terms of actually setting yourself aside as being a good leader in your business, and how through that you can actually engender that level of leadership and participation with your team. So let's have a look at diving into the numbers. And the point that I want to raise here is you know, your financial numbers have never been more important. And it really is vital that you have a real understanding and access to the numbers that will drive your business forward. We really can't afford to put a hand in the sand, whether that is, you know, something that we do, you know, consciously, or whether it's something that we do subconsciously. I mean, you know, again, just a show of hands. You know, when I ask the questions in terms of your comfortable ability with your, you know, your business finance, what does that look like? You know, are you somebody who is, you know, really got high quality, high confidence in terms of understanding your numbers? You can read your balance sheet. Your profit and loss is something that you're really clear and focused on. And, you know, if you wanted, if you're a slightly bigger organization, every line in your profit and loss sheet is assigned to someone's responsibility. whether that's yours or someone in the team or your management team. But, we have that level. Just give me a show of hands if that is, a high level of focus that you have right now. Again, interestingly, fewer hands go up at this point. And that's not unusual. The reason I dare say that we're, jumping onto today's webinar is so that we can have an insight, maybe share some ideas on what is going to make the difference. The situations that we find ourselves in, that we've had some really tough decisions to make. Now, those tough decisions, when we're looking business-wise, absolutely depend on our ability to be able to understand and relate to our numbers, and then to be able to communicate both internally and externally without any ambiguity, and that confidence that we are on track with the financial support or the financial focus, or where we're utilizing that money within the business. I mean, here's something for you to write down. Just a very quick definition of money, if you will. Money is an idea backed by confidence, and I want you to just think about that for a moment. Money is an idea backed by confidence. Now, when I say that, and you start to think of all the different opportunities and where you want to grow the business, if you don't have the money, the confidence isn't going to be there. If you do have the money, you're going to be more confident to make those decisions going forward. And that's really kind of important. I think the final piece on this one, really, where the numbers come into this, is never waste a crisis. And I know that might sound a little bit odd and a little bit funny, but actually, if you think about what we've been through over the last year, I dare say that you will have experienced and learned an awful amount in terms of your business going forward. So never waste a crisis. So just going, diving into this, the money environment. The UK, is probably one of the most complex financial markets out there. Our UK terminology, HMRC, is one of the most complex tax set of rules globally, if not the most. And one of the things to recognize here is, as a business owner, you understand sales, profit. Your focus is always on tomorrow. As a business owner, your language that you use is always about, profit. How profitable are we going to be? If I can be able to do this, then I'm going to be able to make that. Now, the language your accountant often talks is about history. So they look at the hard facts of what the numbers tell them that has been. They're not really open or worried about what your forecast looks like. They're looking, and they're specialists in language with regards to, what the focus has been yesterday. Now, in all of our reporting and everything we've got to do, it's really important, and it gives us that comfort and foundation in terms of how we're building a solid structure within our business and a future for our business. But the point of this is, actually what's happened yesterday, we can't do anything about, but we can obviously take the lessons in order to apply them forward. So that's your accountant. That's the language your accountant speaks. Now, interestingly, your bank speaks a completely different language. And the language that your bank speaks is about how the money is moving in and out of your account, and how those transactions and good debt are actually, bringing in revenue for your bank. So the interesting point when we start to look at this, as a business owner, if you go to your bank and you talk about profit, but what they're looking at is actually how good is the numbers moving around the business, how what it is like in terms of the money coming in versus the money going out. You can suddenly see that it's kind of like just talking a completely different language to somebody else. It doesn't matter about what your profit forecast looks like if the bank sees that that's not the case right now, and maybe that hasn't been the case. Likewise with your accountant, ask your accountant better questions in terms of what the numbers are telling you, so that actually combining all three of these, you're able to have a much greater understanding and language with regards to your business finance. So your knowledge is grown, it's deeper. When you go to the bank and you ask them for investment, or you ask them for an overdraft facility, or whatever the circumstances can be. Always remember this, your bank has got intimate details on every single transaction that you do, on all the spending and investment that you've got within the business. So you've got to make sure that you've got the ability and dexterity as a business owner to talk the various languages. Hands up if that makes sense, please. Just to, that I'm not talking mad. Brilliant, great to see. So let's dive into this. And one of the things that is absolutely key is cash in a business. You've probably all heard the saying that, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king or queen. And never has that been more true and more poignant than it has been over the past, well, it's not quite 12 months, is it? March the 23rd, we went in lockdown. So, 9 to 10 months. When you look at that in the context of your business, there is a whole challenge out there at one point where you can grow broke. And what I mean by growing broke is, you can be, having all of the opportunities and the business there to be able to develop and grow your opportunities going forward and to be profitable. But if you don't have the cash, the capital in the business to be able to invest in that, then actually you get to the point where you can grow broke. And we've seen some massive names in the construction industry, on the high street, that have fallen foul on that. And that's why cash in your business is absolutely critical and something that we need to have a real good handle on. If I was to ask right now, how much have you got in terms of cash in your business? What does your cash flow forecast look like? I wonder just how many of you would be able to tell me in detail, what that potentially looks like. And when we talk about cash flow, I'm going to spend quite a chunk of this afternoon now really focusing on three key measurements of cash flow. Firstly, I want to dive into what net cash flow is. And I want to have a look in terms of what operational cash flow, and then we're going to have a bit of a dive into marginal cash flow. And once we've done that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some really five key ways that you can really focus on developing the growth of your business, and by virtue the cash that you need in your business. So when we start to look at, let's have a look at I guess the first one, which is looking at net cash flow. Now, net cash flow, in essence, is if you think about it, January, we're in January, if you start the year with £10,000 in the bank, and at the end of the year you've got £1,000 cash in the bank in your business account, you have a negative net cash flow of £9,000. Your cash flow has gone down. If you've increased it, you have a positive cash flow of £9,000. So if at the end of the year you've got 19,000, then your net cash flow has grown. Now, ultimately in business, that's what we all want to be striving to achieve. So as you go into quarter one of 2021, what is your cash flow looking like at the moment? What did you start with in January, and what are you forecasting at the end of January? What are you forecasting at the end of February? And what are you forecast for the end of the quarter at the end of March going into April? Because suddenly you can then start to see, right, actually, I can see now where a cash flow forecast is absolutely quite critical. And a key understanding on this one, again, is then, what your business reports tell you. So understanding a little bit about your balance sheet, which you can bring up on, I guess, on your accounting software. And I would imagine most of you are using accounting software. So the balance sheet is really about, funding equals the operations. If we don't have the funding, we can't do the operations. It goes back to that phrase I said about growing broke. So our funding is essentially, it's what we have in debt and what we have in equity. So, but it's that debt and equity that is then invested in our operations. So if we look at it at the moment, there are lots of businesses out there that have got C-bills, they have got bounce back loans. That is actually debt that creates a focus in terms of operation, because we're able to invest that into our businesses to be able to develop and grow them. So when we look in terms of the, the management and key responsibilities, this is where you've got to start to dive down into your team to determine where they're responsible for them. So for instance, how responsible are your team for accounts receivable? So what I mean by that is, how quickly do you get paid as a business? If you've got a management team there, are they really clear just, at the moment that invoice has got to go out, that it's gone? Are they clear in terms of the credit control, in terms of when that needs to be, chased if they haven't paid on the day? The accounts receivable, the faster you can get money into the business, the better. Likewise, if you look at, if you're a product selling business that you've got inventory, what's the value of that inventory? How quickly can you actually sell it? Or likewise, in terms of work in progress, if you're a service-based business, how swiftly can you provide the service in order to get paid? The other end of this one is then when we start looking at accounts receivable. So how long does it take us, accounts payable? I've just seen the typo there on my own presentation. Accounts payable, how long do we take to pay our suppliers? So those people that we need to pay in business. If we negotiated that actually maybe we want to do 30 days with our suppliers, but we want to be paid in 7. Now, for many businesses out there, what this does is it starts to balance out the cash gap. Now, there are some very, very clever businesses out there that have got great models that look at getting paid in advance. So if you're a service operating business, do you get paid after you've provided the service, or you pay the service in advance? It's kind of thinking about going to Tesco's or to any of your supermarkets. And when you go to a supermarket, one of the things to always remember here is that if you ever went there and said, right, can I have the invoice? I'll pay you in, 30 days, end of month. I think they'd look at you and laugh. Yeah, that's what we do in business. But we only do that because it's kind of like the set criteria. That's the way of the world. And I don't think it needs to be. Take Dell, for instance. They'll build computers. Dell have actually got themselves to a point where they have a real cash flow that it's something like if you imagine you've got a cash gap of 20 days. So in other words, by the time you do the work and what you've paid, it's 20 days before you get paid. Dell have actually I think the last time I looked and read an article on them, they've got a negative 21 days. And what that means is they have got money 21 days before they've actually got to sell anything. And what that means is if you go and buy a Dell computer today, you go online, you book in all your specs, everything you want from it, you then buy it, and they will tell you that your PC will be delivered in 21 days time. The cleverness of actually reversing that cash gap to the point that their negative cash gap is just incredible. And so as I go through this afternoon, bearing in mind that at the moment we're looking at this net cash flow impact, I want you to really think about creating positive cash flow within your business. That's the real key message I want to try and get across today. So where can we look at that? Well, we can look at creating profits and improving our profits through how we price, through the volume that we sell, through looking at our margins closely, and through micromanaging our overheads. All of those areas, those 4 key areas, will really start to have an impact in terms of the amount of cash and profit that we're making in the business. And then the working capital, so the amount of money it takes us to actually run our business, we want to reduce the amount of working capital that's required. So our accounts receivable, collecting money faster. If you've got debtors that are outside of terms and conditions, why? It's a really interesting one. I often speak to business owners about this, and there is an element of anticipation and worry and fear about chasing up for debts. And here's the funny paradigm on this: they don't like chasing for debts because they're worried they're going to lose the customer. I think really we've just got to take a moment and think about that. We're worried about losing the customer that isn't paying us on time. Are they a good customer or a bad customer? I'll leave that one for you to think about. Inventory management. How are we managing the stock? Have we got lean systems within the business? Do we have a just-in-time focus? Or have we got the ability to have real good stock control so that we can see where our minimum stock levels are, and then suddenly, that triggers the automatic requirement for us to bring new stock in, all the while just making sure that we're sticking at level. Really interesting one again. If you go to any of the big supermarkets today, there is less warehouse space at the back of a supermarket because all of their stock is stored on the shop floor. And there's really a transition from the lorries and deliveries straight out into the shop floor in order to stack the shelves. I know that from personal experience, having in my younger days worked in supermarkets stacking shelves. Increasing the frequency from which you invoice, and paying suppliers slower. What negotiations can you have to actually have a look at that, to go back to those suppliers and have that conversation? So the next bit I want to talk about really is what we would term as the four chapters. And the four chapters we're going to have a look at. Well, actually, we're going to look at three of them. So we're going to look at profitability. We're going to look at working capital. Other capital we're not going to dive into because that's other areas within a business that may find that they've got capital. And then we're going to have a look at that in terms of it, the response and the outcome of it is the cash and the funding that we need. So profitability. Profitability is really the focus in terms of how well can we read our balance sheet? Can we see where we're profitable? Have we got that level of foresight? The working capital, what have we, addressed maybe even in the last quarter about our working capital? How much money have we got available in order to actually, develop and grow our business? What is our cash in the bank looking like that is there and ready and available for us to invest in marketing, to invest in product, to invest in development, research and development? Other capital have been, essentially, what type of movement might there have been in, whether it's, buildings. A lot of businesses nowadays, invest in their own buildings and utilize that all towards, SIP funds and, for pensions and the like. And then when we review those areas, the profitability, the working capital and other capital, did we actually create enough cash in the business? And, if anything, the outcome from today is I really want you to start to focus on actually developing that capital, developing that cash. So when you plan for this next quarter, and it might be after today, and one of my promises from this session is that I will quite happily put some time aside to sit down and go through this with you in detail to help you make sure that you've got that level of focus. What impact can you have on cash flow through this quarter? Through sales and marketing, through the operations, and actually being able to finance that. With my clients, we set targets on this of what will be the cash in the bank at the end of this quarter. What will be the net cash flow? How will we have grown it? What's the percentage? What's the number? What's the figure look like? And I really help them get absolutely really focused in terms of what that looks like. So the next piece I want to look at is really, it's where we take, I guess if you want, we take profit and we look at working capital as a management responsibility, and we look at operational cash flow. So what is it costing us to actually, run the business? And this is a management challenge. Operational cash flow is really something that your management should be able to measure and monitor. So what have you got in the way of maybe key performance indicators? Maybe you have a dashboard in the business, that you're able to actually really drill into and make sure that you can see on a regular basis what that looks like. Many of the accounting software platforms today offer the ability for you to have an opening screen that gives you that dashboard. Equally, in terms of the responsibility for chapter 1 profit and chapter 2 working on chapter 2, You know, when we look at the operational cash flow, you know, the fact that the management team have got to have the insight and understanding of what the numbers are telling them, and that you've got that level of awareness. It's an interesting one as well, because again, if you go back to what I talked about earlier on, the language of business is profit. It is understanding cash. We can't just purely focus on profit, because it does take cash to actually start to generate that profit. So operational cash gap, or operational cash, is the way in which we can make sure we've always got this ability to, you know, to bridge the cash gap that might be in a business. The construction industry absolutely always struggle with a cash gap. So what does that potentially look like? I think the rule of thumb for many businesses is, if you work out what your your operating costs are on a monthly basis and times that by 3, and that's the cash reserve that you want to have in a business. At any time, you want to have 90 days worth of cash reserve in your business. Now go back to the 23rd of March. You know, for businesses that had 90 days worth of cash in their banks at that point, would have entered into that period with far more confidence than the businesses that are working hand to mouth, which a lot of businesses do. So, you know, it might be that over this year, that's the focus, that you get that level of resilience within your business, that you've got 3 months worth of working capital in your bank account as operating cash flow. And you're always able to just maintain that. And then where the proverbial does hit the flat fan, you've got the ability to be able to, really respond to it, but also to make sure that you can see your way through it. So in terms of the quality of it, the point on this one, I talk a lot about management through this, and that management may be you. I don't know. But if you've got a management team, or if you're a smaller business, and it's maybe a few of you, where are the responsibilities? Who takes responsibility for what particular areas? So the point here is, when we look at cash flow, what we want to be looking at is you're either growing or you're in decline. That's the reality of business. And our management need to be, really focused on limiting wastage, but absolutely focused on creating the gains. And, the point of reference on this one, this is what happens if there is too much wastage and the management are focused or not focused on it, then the likelihood is that the business is in decline. But where we get this right, actually the business can be in growth, and that's where cash flow directly impacts in going forward. So just a quick reflection there. Pop into the chat. What's one of the key considerations or key learnings that you've taken so far? If I just take a couple of moments, it'll give me an opportunity just to have a quick sip of water. What's the key learning so far? What is it you've taken from what we've discussed and had a chat about so far? It's always useful just to get a bit of a feel for that. Okay, whilst we're waiting for a few comments to come through, we'll just progress. So cash flow quality, as you can see, is absolutely key. It's critical. So that takes us then to marginal cash flow. The marginal cash flow is there's a little bit more to it, but essentially it's one of those areas that is often again overlooked. A marginal cash flow is essentially I guess it's the additional cash that will be generated for every, pound of spending that we have in the business. So if you spend £1 in the business, whether that's your product or service, how much of that is actually, then readily available for the business? How much of it has been used to actually provide the service? And it's a great way of looking at actually how we can grow and increase that marginal growth. So for most companies, they only look at their, the gross profit. So, how much gross margin per sale. We want to really start to just dive down into the fine detail of that. How much is required per £1 of sales? So when we start to look at this, and when you break it down, and then you can actually, some businesses will do it per £100, whatever it looks like. Marginal cash flow takes both the gross margin and your working capital into account. And it's almost just the building block of where you can then start to see of how much your business is costing you to run, and how much from that you can actually then take in terms of profitability for what you're doing. So again, it's just being able to have a look, and again, you can break this down across different services, across different products. You can go into quite some detail in terms of what the marginal cash flow looks like. So we've just had a bit of a conversation, if you will, and an insight through in terms of the absolute importance of cash flow within the business. Looked at operational cash flow, looked at net cash flow, and the importance of understanding our marginal cash flow. The final piece that I want to just look at before I dive on to giving you some insight in how we can start to develop and grow the business positively is what we want to call is the rule of one, or sorry, the power of one. And in this quarter and beyond, there are 7 levers that you can look at. Now, for any of you out there that are avid cyclists and know who Sir David Brailsford is, he's a guy that took the Sky Cycling team to all greats, and gold medals at the Tour de France and in the Olympics and so on. But the way he did it was by breaking all of the elements of what the cyclists were doing down into real small marginal elements, which was often known then as marginal gains. And that's what the power of one is all about. It's all about the marginal gains. So he looked at right down to the how thick was the paint on a bike, and how many grams could they lose from that. What were they doing in terms of their habits and their routines. I mean, to the point that the team would be taking the cyclist's mattress and pillow from one hotel to the next, so it limited any colds or anything of that nature. Washing their hands profusely. The same was I think for a famous car manufacturer. And I think actually it was Nissan on the Micra. Now, if you look at the Micra and then someone turned around to you and said, right, I need you to take 50 kilograms off that car, you kind of look at them funnily and say, okay, yeah, so where's that coming from? And what the engineers did was they stripped the car down to every single component part, and then they took grams of every component part that was safe to do so, and actually was then able to reduce the weight of that car. So my challenge to you is doing exactly the same, but I want you to do this in your business. So, for instance, the 7 areas, the 7 levers to improve your profit and your cash flow in the business. The first one is price. If you look across your business and all the things that you do, whether you sell products or use services or a combination, can you add 1% or a percentage to what it is you do? The reality with that is there's often a case that the marketplace won't even realize that you've done that unless it's an end of aisle item. So for instance, milk is an end of aisle item, and if you put the price of milk up, the marketplace knows straight away, and they're up in arms. But if you go down the biscuit aisle and have a look at a packet of fig rolls, which incidentally are my favorite, and you wanted to put the price up on a packet of fig rolls by 10%, no one's going to notice, except the likes of me, who's a fan of fig rolls. But the vast majority won't care, because they just won't notice. And it's the same in business. The only reason we don't put prices up is because we're worried that our clients are going to go, you've just put your prices up. And the reality is, if you put 1% up on your prices, or a 10%, how many would really complain about it? And then there's the volume. And volume is about leads and conversion. And I'm going to talk about that in just a little while. But if you think about the volume, if you were able to do more of your business, you've already now put the prices up and now you're doing more business. You've got again, another winning formula there. Just a quick note as well on the price. If you're a business that regularly discounts, stop. Rather than putting a discount, think about putting a price increase and focusing on the value proposition. So if you discount, very few businesses, when they put a discount, they then realize, well, how many do I now additionally have to sell to make the same profit? Whereas actually, if you put the price up, your likelihood is you don't have to sell as hard to make the same profit. And if it's just a no-brainer when you look at it in that respect. Number 3 is looking at the cost of goods sold and direct costs. So, when we look at, for everything that you sell, what is it costing you to sell it? And this goes back in some respects to the marginal cash flow. What is it costing you to sell each of your products? So where is it you're able to, reduce, streamline those costs? Likewise on overheads, can you take a percentage off on your overheads? Here's a really, really interesting one for you as well. I've seen this happen so many times, and certainly seen it happen through the COVID crisis. Immediately things like marketing were immediately stopped and scrapped. Can't afford that anymore, and it's kind of ludicrous. So if we're not marketing, how are people going to know to buy from us? And how can we widen our marketplace and our scope of the marketplace? So just be very, very mindful that when you're looking at this, you've got to be rational about it, not irrational. So overheads, can you take a percentage off on your overheads? I've already talked about accounts receivables. So can you reduce the days? We've talked about inventory and work in progress. So, can you get paid quicker in terms of what it is you're doing? Can you move your product faster? Do you know what your fast moving products are? Do you know what products haven't been moving? What are your best selling services? And then those account payables, can you take longer? Can you negotiate greater terms with your accounts payable side of life? Now, what's really interesting on this one is when I put this up, and if it's okay, and just put a hand up if it is okay. After this session, we'll probably send out an email with a couple of documents, and one of them will be a small worksheet which set out of this nature. Over the next quarter, all I challenge you to do is in those 7 areas, write 3 ideas for each area for a marginal gain. 3 areas that you can increase the price, 3 areas that you can focus on the cost of goods, 3 areas that you can reduce your overheads by. Again, these are small percentages, but the impact of these small percentages has a massive compounded effect, certainly over the period of a quarter and absolutely over the period of the year. Just hands up if that resonates with everyone and that makes sense. Brilliant. Seeing some good hands going up there. Okay, so the next bit I want to dive into and talk about, I want to now give you a bit of a strategy and focus on how we can directly influence our cash flow. So I've told you so far about net cash flow, operational cash flow, marginal cash flow, and the importance of cash in your business. So how can we get cash in the business? And what I want to share now is the 5 ways of growing your business and your cash flow. Now, the point of reference to remember here that there are certain areas that as business owners that we know, and I'm fairly certain if I was to ask the question, and I'm going to ask it, so please excuse me, you'll probably know how many customers that you have. You'll know the revenue you're getting, from those customers, and you'll likely know how much profit they make as well. But the interesting point on this, when we look at that, is that these are just results. Where it gets really exciting is when we start to focus on what we term as the 5 ways. So when you look at this list here now, you'll notice that the customers, turnover, and profit are the results underneath leads, conversion rate, and so on. And I'm going to talk you through this now. So this is the concept, and what I want you to think about is the numbers you put. I'm just going to talk about this in, let's say, in a month. So in any month, we know, and again, if you're not measuring these numbers now, might be something that you need to start thinking about doing. But every month we know that we've got 4,000 leads. Now, what quantifies a lead? Well, the easiest way that I like to look at it is if you imagine you've got a shop window or shop front, a lead is somebody that walks into the shop, and they're walking in because they've taken an interest in what it is you do. So you can associate that with whatever your business is, but it's walking into the shop. So every month we know we get 4,000 leads coming into our notional shop. We know of those 4,000 leads through our engagement with them and the way we put them through the sales process, that we convert 25% of them. And again, just a reminder, if you don't know these numbers, you might want to start measuring them. That gives us 1,000 customers. Now, of those 1,000 customers, through measuring, we know that every month there are 2 transactions from them. So that means that they'll come back and they'll buy again twice. We know that each time they come in, their average sale is about £100. That gives us a turnover of 200,000 in this notional month. Now, I know these are big figures, but it just goes to demonstrate the process here. So the margins we know are 25%. That's how much profit we're making on those. The turnover gives us a profit of 50,000. So I want now to think. So remember, I talked about the marginal gains. We're going to apply the same philosophy to these numbers. So this time I want you to think about a 10% increase. So this time now, and just give me a show of hands, if you put some marketing focus and went out there and marketed over the next quarter, could you increase your lead generation by 10%? Put a hands up if that's a yes. So just your leads that you've got, can you increase them by as small as 10% over the next quarter? Unsurprisingly, we've got hands going up there. So when we look at that, then the number of leads, 10% on 4,000, that's an additional 400. In the same context here, then, our conversion rate of 25%, if we decided that actually through some training, through focusing on our sales process, through getting really tuned into it, we're able to increase our conversion rate by 10%. So our conversion rate goes up to 27.5%. That means that we've gone from 1,000 customers and we've now added 210 additional customers. So we focused on lead generation marketing and getting out there and actually canvassing for new business. And then we tightened up our skills and our sales process to convert 10% better. So now we've got 210 extra clients, which is quite significant. The number of transactions we increased by 10% again. So this time on average, our clients are coming back 2.2 times. Each time they come back, we're adding £10 to that spend. And that might just be again through the way in which we're able to upsell and our sales process and offers and value perception, maybe a tiered approach and a ladder approach to our product line or service line, which interestingly now takes us our turnover up by £92,000. So we've added quite significantly more. This time when we look at the margins, again, we increase our margins by 27.5%. And here's the interesting point on the margins. You could probably go away and do that right now and just have a look on the 2 sides of your profit pie. So part of your profit pie in terms of the profit you make from the sales that you make directly. The other part where you're eating into your profit is what you sell. So again, goes back to the power of one when we're looking at cost of goods, overheads, accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, and work in progress. Suddenly, you're easily able to add 10% to your profits just from what you're doing within. So our profit then goes from 50,000 to now a whopping 85,500. Now, the interesting point on that is in terms of turnover, it's about a 47% or 42% increase. But in terms of profit, it's a 61% increase. Now, today I've just used, I guess, a 10%, but those margins can be whatever you want them to be. What's really interesting, actually, if you did 10% on 10% year on year for the next 7 years, it's actually equates to 100% growth in the business, and that can be massive, absolutely huge. Anyway, just in way of rounding off, I want you to just contemplate and think about this. When you improve and have a greater grasp and understanding of your numbers, and you're able to really make them, the numbers work for you in a positive way, and they're not something that maybe are a challenge. How's that going to improve your life and what you do in business? What's your confidence going to look like? What's the teamwork in the business going to look like? What's the increased business value going to be? If you've got a business that shows a very, very healthy cash flow and something that is, equally sustainable, what's that going to say? What does it look like in terms of, the quality of conversations that you have with your accountant in terms of the development investment going forward? Would you sleep better? And here's the really interesting one. Would you start to live a better life? Because I think, that's really, really important. Business should give us more life. That's the point here. Business should give us more life. And all too often we find ourselves as business owners being absolutely consumed by what it is we do. So just by way of, I guess, putting a bit of a summary onto today's webinar, and I thank you for your attendance, by the way. One of the things here that we talked about is that business owner in terms of understanding tomorrow, getting that balance, being able to utilize your accountant and that the base of the triangle rather than just the pinnacle of, reports, end of year and tax, and then having, the ability to have, better conversations with, with your bank. Now, all of these resolve around actually a higher knowledge in terms of what your business and finances and numbers tell you. Now, one of the things that we have is Action Cash, where actually what we're able to do after a quick discussion is to take some historic data and put it into our system, into Action Cash. And we're able to actually then start to predict and help you project what that cash flow looks like, where the savings are, but most importantly, what was the impact of making those savings? What is the impact of actually, putting that 1% on accounts receivable and being able to have our invoices paid sooner? Bottom line from today, from today's session is I'm more than happy to put a time into the diary to have a proper one-to-one coaching session with you and to have a look at Action Cash and see if it's something that might be useful and interesting for you to dive into. And then my encouragement to you is to then repeat. Whenever you're, planning, what are you doing every month to review your numbers? What are you doing every week to, look at what the numbers are telling you? And every month, what are you planning in terms of how you're going to, move forward? I hope this has been of use to you this afternoon. We are finishing just a little bit ahead of time. I think in the current circumstances and situation, giving us, just under an hour of your time this afternoon to have a look at your financial position and maybe take some learnings. I hope it's been useful this afternoon. And if it has, we shall reach out. We'll share a few documents with you and certainly make the recording available so that you can go back over it if you do desire. And if you're open to having that coaching conversation, we will absolutely put some time in the diary to have that call with you to actually help you put this into effect in your business. So on that note, that's all I've got for you. I hope it's been a useful afternoon. Thank you very much. And we will be in touch shortly with everything we promised from today's session. Thanks a lot.